If we look at this map of Scandinavian settlements, meaning Viking expansion into Europe, we can see something very weird going on here, which is in the 8th century, you start seeing a beginning of expansion and settlement, really. In the 9th century, you see it going a little further to places like England. In the 10th century, you see it going as far as France. In the 11th century, you see some of it even reaching as far as Africa. But look at the green, how far they've expanded. These are raids, not settlements. And you notice that at Al Andalus, there's Viking raids. Al Andalus is the Muslim or Moor settlements. Moor settlements under Muslim occupation. The religion of the people of the day, and it shows through history and collection of texts and stuff like that that these were actually not forced conversions. A lot of people just liked the idea of conversion, and it's easy to forget that Europe at the time was at a decline, and so this would have been a welcome thing. And so when these people conquered these areas, or basically came in and raided these areas, this should have been it, right? This should have been like whatever. But you can see with these raids that they're going east, west, south. Well, like I said, you notice that it's the 8th, ninth, and 10th century and 11th century. This is the exact time of the Islamic expansion. The Islamic expansion is about, in the 8th, ninth, and 10th centuries and goes on further into the Vikings. They go back to where they came from. Some stay and their descendants stay, but the Muslims carried on. But the early migration you can see, and you notice that Italy, parts of Italy are conquered by the Muslims. Turkey, parts of Europe, Eastern Europe, and then parts of Spain, Portugal, North Africa. As you saw there were Viking raids in that same area. And so this is like a strange squeeze going on at this time. Not to mention that there were other people coming from other sections. So, how the hell did Europe bounce back from this? This should be in their final days. And also, how did they remain racially homogenous, considering how many people were constantly coming in from one side to the other? In order to answer this, we have to start with one specific area, and that's Scandinavia. And we know that the Scandinavian DNA did not stay in one area. In fact, when we check DNA, we can see that Scandinavian DNA made it all the way to North Africa. And that's why you can find some blondes in North Africa today. And you can find some blondes in Italy, which was virtually unknown in the olden days. You can find blondes all over the west side of Europe, which was there but wasn't as common as it is today. Also, if you look at Scandinavia, their genes also have had some mixing because they took back some brides from these areas that they raided. Remember, when they raid, they take the spoils. And when they take the spoils, they eat, they make slave women have children with them, and then that's basically what they did. That was their lives. Obviously, they were turned into Christians, so that DNA still runs deep inside them. Now, the question is, did they ever capture anyone of black descent? The answer is obviously. This is why I had no problem with that movie that had a black woman of Scandinavian DNA or whatever in that area. It's possible that that happened. Now, I have to say something very important, which is the idea that Europeans remained racially homogenous throughout all this time is nonsensical. I think the reason why a lot of the DNA that we see today and a lot of the things that we see today don't resemble outsiders is because anything, there's an assumption that the people in Europe are racially pure or racially untouched, even though their history would suggest multiple invasions, multiple landings by different people. And this starts in Italy, which is one of the favorite places that I can say there must have been at least some foreign influence. But if we think about it even further now, let's take it back and say what was happening in Europe at this time that made these people get squeezed in such a way? What happened that forced everyone to move in that direction and realize that they have to go there? Well, remember, this was Christian and Islamic times, meaning that these places broadcast themselves throughout the whole world, letting people as far as Africa know about them. And so Africans, as you will see, were clearly aware of Europe. As far as Kenya, they were aware of people in Europe. In fact, Vasco da Gama and his friends landed in Mozambique, and they had to pretend to be Turks in order to get away because they were wanted as Christians. This tells you that people from Mozambique knew about people from Europe that far back. And again, the reason why I'm telling you this is it paints a different picture of what Africa was like back then, where they were fully aware of Europe. Another thing that we have to consider is the fact that there were the North Africans, the Moors, who mated with a lot of the Portuguese people. And I don't know what happened, but for some reason people keep claiming that they cannot find any black DNA in those regions. And who can blame them? If they find black DNA, it will completely change the history of Europe completely. They will no longer be able to claim that black Africans have to thank Europeans for bringing technology down. Instead, it will be Europeans have to thank black Africans for us bringing technologies into Europe, which is never going to happen.